स्वाध्याय टीवी। डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
Namaskar, dear students. I, Dr. Himanshu Patel, welcomes you from Chaitanya Studio of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar University on lecture series on mobile application development using Android. In last session, we have discussed the history of software development for mobile. Then we also discussed what is Android, its architecture and various versions of Android. In today's session, we discuss about a development environment which is used for Android. So, Android Studio is the official integrated development environment, in short IDE, for Android application development. Initially, Eclipse is used for Android application development, but nowadays Android Studio is declared as the official IDE by the Google for Android application development. Android Studio, like any other IDE, provides everything you need to start developing apps for Android, including the Android Studio IDE and the Android SDK tools. Like Microsoft Visual Studio, we have Android Studio for mobile apps development. Now, in order to install Android Studio, we have certain prerequisites or requirement for installing Android Studio. Here we considered only Windows platform, because whatever demo I will demonstrate is on Windows operating system. You can have Android Studio for Linux also, but here we consider system requirement for Windows only. So, you require Microsoft Windows operating system 8, 7, Vista 2003, which may be 32-bit or 64-bit. Then minimum 4 GB RAM is recommended, because heavy resource required to run Android Studio. So, 4 GB RAM is recommended. Then you should have minimum 400 MB hard disk, maximum it may be 4 to 5 GB, but 400 MB hard disk space is required. At least 1 GB for Android SDK, emulator system, images and caches. Your monitor should be at least 1280 by 800 screen resolution. You also require Java Development Kit or JDK 7 and above, and Intel processor with support for Intel VTX, Intel EM64T and execute disable bit functionality is required, but these requirement is optional. So, in order to install Android Studio, you should have a system with this minimum requirement. Android Studio is a free to download by the Google. So, you can easily download Android Studio from Google, and the URL for download Android Studio is shown in screen, which is http developer.android.com/sdk/index.html. So, when you type these URL in your browser, it will open this screen on your browser. So, here you can see the Android Studio download home page, and there is a green button which is download Android Studio for Windows. First of all, you have to select whether you want to download it for Linux or Windows. So, here we considered Windows. So, when typing this URL, it will show this screen, and you have to press this green button, which is with caption download Android Studio for Windows. So, when you click this button, it will start downloading Android Studio. Then you have to click this agreement, and then you can download this Android Studio. You have to accept term and condition at the bottom, and then you have to press blue button with caption download Android Studio for Windows. Now, it will start downloading Android Studio for Windows. Once this download is completed, you can install Android Studio, but as we mentioned earlier, in order to use Android Studio, you must include JDK. So, first thing you have to do is download Android Studio, then you have to download JDK, and once JDK is installed, you can install your Android Studio. So, now we see how to download Java Development Kit 7. So, I have mentioned URL for downloading JDK 1.7, which is a prerequisite for Android Studio in this screen. In screen you can show this URL. So, you can type this URL in your browser, and when it is press OK or go button, then it will open page for downloading JDK 1.7 that we show in next slide. So, this is a home page for downloading JDK. Here you have to go to the bottom to accept agreement and version that you want to download by pressing scroll bar down. So, you have to go to bottom of the page and again accept license agreement as in the case of Android Studio. Then you can download JDK for Windows, which is x86, which is 32-bit system, or Windows x64, which is 64-bit version. So, depending on your system, you have to download either 32-bit version or 64-bit version. So, in next slide we show the bottom of the previous page, and here you can show the list of JDK available for download, and you can see it is available for Linux, Solaris, Windows, Mac, and whether your operating system is 32-bit or 64-bit. Accordingly, you have to click that button and you have to also accept that license agreement. Once you download these executable jar file, then you have to double click this downloaded file and it will start installing JDK 1.7. So, when you double click that executable file, it will show a screen similar to this, and here you have to press next button to continue your installation. In next screen, you can see what things you want to install from JDK. You can use default option also. Here there is a change button, where by pressing change button and specifying path, you can set the installation folder for JDK. Here by default it is a in program file with version name, but suppose you want to install it in D or E drive, you can also change. So, once you change this path or use default path, then you have to press next button and installation will start. You can show progress of installation by this progress bar, and in between it will ask for installing Java runtime environment, which is also known as a JRE, where you have to specify the path for Java runtime environment. Here also you can change the path or installation path for Java runtime environment. Once it is set or you want to use default path, then you have to press next button and it will start installing JRE. Here is a screen showing how JRE is installed. It also shows one progress bar, and when JRE installation is finished and JDK installation is finished, it will display this screen, and then you have to press close button to finish Java SDK installation. So, so far we have discussed two things. One, to develop Android IDE and or Android Studio, and another is to download and install JDK 1.7. Once JDK is installed, we must verify whether it is properly installed or not. So, how can you verify that? So, as shown in screen, you have to open command prompt, and in command prompt you have to type Java and then minus version. So, suppose if it is properly installed, then it will show message shown in this screen. Here you can see the Java version is 1.70, and 75th update is there. So, if this message is displayed properly, then it means your Java is installed successfully without any error. As we assume that you have already downloaded Android Studio, now we start installing Android Studio. So, again like Java, you have to execute this downloaded file, and this exe file when you launch, it will open this screen. It shows welcome message for Android Studio setup. Here you have one option called next button. When you press next button, it will start installing Android Studio. You have to check all check boxes. It also shows how much space is required for installation when you select all these options, and then you have to press next button to proceed further. In case of JDK or any other software installation, you must agree license agreement. So, here is the screen for license agreement. You have to press I agree button, otherwise installation will not proceed further and it will be stopped. So, click on I agree button and further installation process starts. Here you have flexibility of changing default path for Android Studio installation. So, here you can specify SDK installation location and Android Studio installation location. So, by clicking on browse button, you can have different path also, where you can install these SDK as well as Android Studio. So, specify path for Android Studio if you want to change, otherwise you can use default path also, and then you have to press next button. It will ask you Android Studio folder name. So, here you can type a name with which that folder name is created. Here you choose a start menu folder name, which is by default Android Studio, and once it is OK with you, you can press install button. After this, installation is actually starting. You can see in screen installation progress. You can show detail also where these files are copied and everything. Now, once installation is finished, all files are properly copied, it will show you message as shown in screen. Again you have to press next button, and you can also see what actually installation performed by clicking on show details. Now, your Android Studio is properly installed, and you have to press finish button to launch or start Android Studio. You can see on the screen, when Android is launched for the first time, it will show this complete installation dialog box, where you have three options. First option is want to import your previous version configuration, then you can select first option, which is I want to import my setting from a previous version, if it is there. Second option is I want to import my settings from a custom location, which may be in some path. So, if you have setting in certain location, you can use these option. But suppose you are launching or installing Android Studio for the first time, you must select third option, which is I do not have a previous version of Android Studio, or I do not want to import my setting. So, in your case, if you are installing Android Studio for the first time, you have to press or click last radio button, and then you have to press OK button. So, it will start or launching Android Studio IDE. So, here is the Android Studio asking you for downloading updates and creating virtual device for you. So, if you have internet connection available, it will download all the latest updates for Android Studio and SDK, and then you can start IDE. Press finish button once everything is downloaded and ready to use. So, when you press finish button, actual IDE is shown. This is our welcome screen for Android Studio. Here there are various options available to start mobile application development. So, this is how you can download Android Studio, you can download JDK, you can install JDK and Android Studio, but only thing you have to remember is you have to first download JDK and install it, and then you have to install your Android Studio. And if internet connection is available, at the end you will receive all the update and necessary updates for SDK as well. So, this is how we can install our Android Studio. So, once it is installed, you can develop Android application using these Android Studio. Let us see what are the features of Android Studio. So, Android Studio has many features. These are some of the distinct features of Android Studio. First of all, it has an intelligent code editor. That means, when you write down code, it not just only shows the syntax highlighting, but it also prompt you for API methods, etc. There is a simple project wizard, by using which using this wizard you can quickly write down or set up your mobile application project. Now, earlier IDE is only for developing applications for Android phones, but Android Studio is a multi-screen application development environment, where you can not only develop the application for Android phones, but Android tablets, Android Wear, Android TV and Google Glass also. So, every application can be developed using single IDE, which is Android Studio. That is why it is heavy in size and process. Other features of Android Studio is virtual device for all shape and sizes. That means, you can have a virtual device, we will discuss briefly, but virtual device is nothing but it is a emulator where you can test your application and it behaves exactly like actual device. So, in Android Studio we can test our application on a virtual device which is of any shape and size. The next features of Android Studio is Android build evolved with Gradle. For example, I have Android phone with version 4 and you have Android phone of version 3. So, I want to support version 4 as well as version 3 also. So, it is possible in case of Android Studio, you can have same project with different APK files or installation file which is suitable for you. We can create multiple APKs for your Android apps with different features using the same project. For any application, there is a workflow, which means you have to follow these steps for developing, testing and publishing your application. First step is to environment setup. First, you have to decide development environment, whether you want to use Eclipse, Android Studio or any other IDE for developing your mobile applications. So, first is the environment setup, which we have already discussed, that how to install and set up your development environment, which is nothing but Android Studio. Once your development environment is ready, you can easily develop application. Next step is to project setup and actual development. Now, you have IDE available, so you write down code, you gather all the resources required. Resources means it may be image, audio, video or any other file required to write down your application. So, next step is to project setup and development. Now, once your application is developed, you must test this application before giving to some other users. So, next step is building, debugging and testing. So, you can build your project into debuggable APK or application package file and it can be run and installed on emulator or Android powered device. You can directly test your application on a physical device or you can run your application on this virtual device called emulator. Suppose your application have no error or it is tested for many devices and run successfully. Now you want to publish it for widespread promotion. So next step is publishing. Publishing means configure and build your application for release and distribute your application to users. You can publish your application on Google Play Store, which is a free marketplace for your application. You can have application which is freely available to all, or you can have paid one also. You can take money for your apps also. So this is how your application life cycle will execute, or this is called application workflow. We have Android virtual device. It is in short called AVDs. We already discussed that Android virtual device is an emulator configuration that lets you model an actual device by defining hardware and software option to be emulated by the Android emulator. What does it mean? It means you can have virtual device which exactly behaves like actual device, and whatever test results you will get on this device is also applicable on the physical device. So Android virtual device has a certain components, or it consists of hardware profile, what hardware it represents, mapping to a system image, other options, and dedicated storage area on your development machine. A dedicated storage means every phone has a SD card functionality. So you can have SD card also, you can have RAM also, you can have screen resolution of different size also. So all these are included in these AVD, so that it exactly behaves like a physical device. In today's lecture, we discuss how to download and installed JDK and Android Studio, and we also discuss features of Android Studio and what is a virtual device is all about. Now in next lecture we will start writing Hello World application and see in detail about Android Studio. Thank you and happy learning.
स्वाध्याय टीवी